Welcome back, everyone. Tonight's story is one of hardship, second chances, and a love that blooms where it is least expected. It is the journey of a young woman who struggles to escape poverty, only to discover that life's cruel twists can sometimes lead to something far greater than she imagined. Before we begin, I'd like you to go down to the comments and tell us the name of the city you're watching from. And don't forget to rate this story after listening. It helps us keep bringing you more of these unforgettable tales. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy. May this story bring you both excitement and peace tonight. Anna sat hunched over a chipped wooden table in the dim kitchen of her aunt's house. The single light bulb above flickered, casting shadows across the peeling wallpaper. A half-empty plate of rice sat untouched in front of her, cold now, but she couldn't bring herself to eat. Hunger wasn't new. What gnawed at her tonight was not her stomach, but the emptiness of her future. Her childhood friend Becky leaned against the counter, scrolling through her phone. The glow from the screen lit up her face as she laughed softly. "Look at this," Becky said, turning the phone toward Anna. "Maggie from high school, she's in Paris now. Can you believe it?" On the screen, a girl their age posed in front of the Eiffel Tower, smiling wide, wrapped in a designer coat. Anna forced a smile, but quickly looked away. "Of course I can believe it. She was always lucky." "Lucky?" Becky raised a brow. "She worked for it." Anna's chest tightened. Maybe Maggie had worked for it, but wasn't hard work supposed to be rewarded? If that were true, why was she still here, scrubbing floors and enduring her aunt's endless lectures, while others traveled the world? Becky scrolled again, showing off another success story. "Everyone's moving forward, Anna. Maybe you should try harder." Anna let out a bitter laugh. "Try harder? Do you think I haven't tried? Every job I apply for turns me away. Degree, no experience. Just a poor girl who lost her parents too young. You know what it feels like to walk into every room already knowing you don't belong?" Becky's smile faded. She put the phone down and reached for Anna's hand. But Anna pulled away. Her aunt's voice echoed in her head, sharp and unforgiving. "You're useless. A burden. You should be grateful I even feed you." Anna clenched her fists. She was tired of being grateful for scraps. Tired of begging life for the smallest kindness. Tired of watching others soar while she crawled through mud. She rose suddenly, pacing the small kitchen. "I'm done with this life, Becky. I won't spend the rest of my years waiting for something that will never come. I don't care how I'll get rich. I'll change everything, even if it means marrying a foreigner I don't love. I refuse to stay trapped." Becky's eyes widened. "Anna, don't say that," but Anna cut her off. Her voice was low, trembling with fury and desperation. "I'm serious. Poverty is a cage, and I'm breaking out of it. One way or another." Lying on her thin mattress, Anna stared at the cracked ceiling above her. Outside, the sounds of the city drifted through the window cars honking. Dogs barking, neighbors laughing. She closed her eyes and whispered into the darkness, "This isn't the end of my story. It's just the beginning." And with that vow, Anna's journey began. The next morning, Anna woke before the sun. The air was damp and heavy, and the sounds of roosters crowing drifted in through the thin window. She sat up slowly, her body aching from another restless night, but her mind was sharper than it had been in weeks. Today was the day. On the rickety table in the corner, she laid out her documents, a worn resume typed on cheap paper, a few certificates from short courses she had once taken, and a faded ID card. The envelope she slid them into was creased and stained, but it was all she had. She smoothed it flat with trembling hands. Her aunt stirred in the next room, muttering in her sleep. Anna glanced toward the door, half expecting her to wake and start another barrage of insults. The thought made her move faster. She changed into her cleanest blouse, a white one with a missing button at the cuff, and a black skirt that had grown tight around the waist. She brushed her hair, tied it back simply, and looked at herself in the cracked mirror. The girl staring back at her looked tired. Her eyes shadowed, but there was something else there, too. A flicker of determination. Anna whispered to her reflection, "This is it. No turning back." The bus ride to the resort was long and noisy. The vehicle packed with vendors carrying baskets, students in uniforms, and workers clutching their lunches. Anna sat squeezed between a woman with a baby and a man who snored loudly, her envelope clutched to her chest. With each turn of the wheels, her heart beat harder. As the bus moved farther from the city's center, the scenery changed. The gray concrete gave way to open stretches of road lined with palm trees. The air felt lighter, tinged with salt from the nearby ocean. Anna leaned toward the window, eyes widening as the coastline came into view. Then, suddenly, there it was. The resort, it rose like a palace against the horizon, whitewashed walls gleaming in the sun. Balconies wrapped in glass, fountains spraying arcs of water that sparkled like diamonds. Tourists in bright clothes walked across the manicured grounds, pulling expensive luggage, their laughter carried by the breeze. Anna's breath caught. She had seen places like this only in magazines, in pictures posted by girls like Maggie who now lives far from hers. And now, she was here not as a guest, but as someone hoping to belong. The bus dropped her near the resort's entrance. Anna smoothed her skirt and walked toward the grand lobby. The doors opened automatically and a rush of cool, perfumed air enveloped her. She froze for a moment, overwhelmed. The marble floors shone like mirrors, chandeliers glittered overhead, and the reception desk stretched across the room like something out of a dream. For a moment, she thought everyone was staring at her, that her cheap blouse and worn shoes screamed out of place. She almost turned back. Then a voice stopped her. "You must be here for the job application." Anna turned to see a woman in her 50s, dressed neatly in a navy blue uniform. Her hair was pinned back, streaked with gray, and her face carried the lines of years. But her eyes were kind, warm in a way Anna hadn't expected. "Yes, ma'am," Anna managed, her voice shaking. The woman smiled and held out a hand. "I'm Mary. I'll be helping you get settled. Come along." Anna blinked. She had braced herself for cold rejection, for the stern faces of HR officers who didn't have time for girls like her. But instead, she found kindness. She took Mary's hand, gripping it as if it were a lifeline. Mary guided her through the resort, explaining each area as they walked. The restaurant, with its crystal glasses and polished silverware, the pool surrounded by lounge chairs and umbrellas. The path leading down to the beach where tourists sipped cocktails while waves lapped at their feet. Finally, Mary led her through a staff hallway and up a narrow staircase. She opened a door to reveal a small room, a single bed, a desk, a closet, and a window overlooking the gardens. "This will be your room," Mary said gently. "It's not fancy, but it's yours." Anna stepped inside, her heart swelling. The walls were bare, the furniture simple, but to her, it felt like the grandest place she had ever lived. For the first time in months, she had a space of her own. She turned to Mary, her voice breaking. "Thank you," patted her shoulder.
"I don't work hard, Anna."
"And this place will take care of you." Later that evening, Anna sat on the edge of the bed, staring out the window. The garden below was lit with soft lanterns, and she could hear faint music drifting from the bar. Tourists passed by, laughing carefree, their lives so far removed from hers. But this time, she didn't feel envy. She felt anticipation. For the first time in years, she wasn't stuck. She wasn't trapped in her aunt's small, suffocating house. She was standing at the edge of something new. Her fingers brushed the envelope on her desk, her resume still inside. She whispered to herself, "This is where everything changes." And she was right. Anna's first week at the resort was a storm of new experiences. Each morning began before sunrise, when she joined the other staff in their crisp uniforms. They bustled like an army preparing for battlesome sweeping hallways, others polishing glasses, others rushing trays of food to the kitchen. Anna's job was split between housekeeping and assisting in the dining area. The work was hard, her feet ached, and sometimes her back screamed from bending too long over sheets and furniture. But compared to the misery she'd endured under her aunt's roof, this was freedom. She learned quickly. She memorized the routines. How to fold towels into perfect swans. How to place utensils exactly an inch from the edge of the table.
Oh.
How to greet guests with a smile no matter how tired she was. Her fellow workers noticed her effort. A few teased her for being too serious. Others offered small tips how to carry 3 plates at once, which supervisor to avoid when you wanted a break. For the first time in years, Anna felt like she belonged somewhere. Yet amidst the bustle of tourists and staff, one face began to stand out. It happened late one afternoon. Anna was sent to deliver fresh towels to a suite on the 3rd floor. She knocked softly, balancing the stack in her arms. The door opened, and there he was. The man standing before her looked like he had stepped out of a glossy magazine. He was tall, with broad shoulders and a jawline sharp as stone. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, and his blue eyes seemed almost unreal under the warm light of the hallway. He wore a casual button-down shirt, but the faint scent of expensive cologne drifted out with him. For a moment, Anna forgot to breathe. "Your towels, sir," she managed, her voice unsteady. The man studied her for a heartbeat too long before nodding. He took the towels, muttered a simple thank you, and closed the door. Anna stood frozen in the hallway, her pulse racing. She told herself it was nothing, just another guest. But something about him lingered in her mind long after she walked away. Over the next few days, she saw him again and again. At the pool, lounging with a book. In the lobby, speaking in hushed tones with the manager. In the restaurant, sipping whiskey alone. Staff whispered about him, curious but cautious. His name, she learned, was David, a wealthy guest from overseas, here on business that no one dared question. One evening, while Anna cleared tables near the bar, she glanced toward David. He sat in a corner booth, a glass of whiskey in hand. His posture relaxed, but his expression heavy. She tried to ignore him, focusing on stacking plates, but when she returned to wipe the table nearby, she noticed his glass nearly toppling. Before she could react, David slumped forward, his head landing against his arm. Alarm jolted through her. She set down her tray and hurried over. "Sir, are you all right?" No answer. His eyes were half closed, his breathing uneven. Anna reached for his shoulder, shaking him gently. "You need to get up. Let me help you back to your room." In an instant, his hand shot up, gripping hers tightly. His eyes glazed. With drink locked onto hers, and then without warning, he pulled her closer. Pressing his lips against hers in a desperate, drunken kiss, Anna gasped, shocked. Every instinct told her to pull away, to run, to scream. But his hold was firm, his warmth overpowering. Her heart thundered in her chest as the world blurred around them. What began as an accident spiraled quickly, dangerously, into something more. That night, in the secrecy of his suite, the line between mistake and fate blurred forever. By morning, everything had changed, though Anna didn't yet realize how deeply. The first rays of sunlight crept through the curtains, warm and uninviting. Anna stirred awake, her head heavy, her body aching with the weight of everything that had happened. For a fleeting moment, she allowed herself to believe that, perhaps, this was real, that perhaps the man who had kissed her so fiercely the night before had meant it, that maybe he had seen her not as a maid, not as a poor girl, but as a woman. But the illusion shattered the moment David's voice filled the room. "Get dressed. You need to leave." Now, Anna blinked, startled. She sat up slowly, clutching the sheets to her chest. David was pacing across the suite, his hair disheveled, his face pale with panic. His shirt was half-buttoned, his tie hanging loose, and yet he carried himself with the tense authority of someone used to being obeyed. "Wait, what?" Anna stammered. He ran a hand through his hair. "You can't be here when my employer comes by, if anyone finds out." His voice trailed off, but the fear in it was unmistakable. Anna's throat tightened. Just hours ago, his touch had felt like fire, like connection, like something more. Now he couldn't wait to be rid of her. Slowly, she stood and began to gather her clothes. Her hands trembled as she slipped into her skirt and blouse, the same uniform that marked her as nothing more than staff. She felt the sting of tears in her eyes, but she forced them back. I'm sorry," she whispered. Though she didn't know why she was apologizing, David finally stopped pacing and looked at her. His eyes, clearer now, held regret, but also something else, something harder to name: fear, shame. "It's not you," he said quietly, his tone softer. "It's just complicated. No one can know." Anna nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She slipped past him, toward the door, her footsteps light but heavy with humiliation. The hallway outside felt colder than ever. Days passed, but the memory lingered. Anna threw herself into work, folding sheets, carrying trays, polishing glasses until her hands ached. But no matter how she tried to bury it, the memory of David's lips against hers, the fire in his touch haunted her, and fate did not let her forget. She saw him in the lobby, speaking to the resort's manager. She saw him by the pool, sipping another drink, his eyes scanning the horizon as if searching for something he couldn't name. She saw him in the restaurant, seated alone, his posture composed, but his eyes shadowed. Each time, their gazes met. Each time, he looked away too quickly. Her heart twisted. He wanted her gone, yet he couldn't stop noticing her. Then, one evening, Anna felt something different. She was late cleaning a guest hallway when nausea struck her. She rushed to the bathroom, barely making it before she retched into the sink. Her knees wobbled, her head spun. The next morning it happened again. And again the morning after. She tried to dismiss it, but deep down, a thought began to form, a thought that filled her with both dread and fragile hope. Her hands shook as she bought a small pregnancy test from a pharmacy, tucked away in the city. She hid it in her bag, waited until nightfall, slipped into the staff bathroom. Minutes later, she stared at the faint pink line. Pregnant. Her breath caught. The walls seemed to close in around her. Her life, already fragile, had just shifted. Beneath her feet, she pressed a trembling hand to her stomach, whispering, "This can't be real." But it was. The next day, with her heart in her throat, Anna searched for David. She found him in the lobby, dressed sharply, speaking to a staff member. She approached hesitantly, her hands clenching the strap of her bag. "David," she said softly. He turned, surprise flashing across his face. His eyes darted to the staff nearby, then back to her. "What are you doing here?" Anna swallowed hard. "I need to talk to you. It's important." Moments later, in the privacy of his suite, she told him. Her voice trembled, her hands shaking, but the words left her lips all the same. "I'm pregnant." For a long moment, David just stared at her, silent. Shock flickered across his face, then something unreadable. Finally, he spoke, his voice low but steady. "Are you sure?" Anna nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "I took the test. It's positive." David sank into a chair, his hands covering. His face, when he looked up again, his expression was conflicted but not angry, not dismissive. "I'll support you," he said firmly. "You won't go through this alone. You'll have a place to stay, money, whatever you need. I'll take care of the baby." Anna stared at him, stunned. She had braced herself for rejection, for denial, for blame. Not love, not promises, but help. And for now, that was enough. David kept his word. 2 days after Anna told him the news, he arrived in front of the resort in a black sedan, polished until it gleamed. The sight of it alone turned heads among staff and guests. When Anna stepped inside, clutching her small bag tightly, her heart pounded with uncertainty. The ride was silent. David drove with his usual focus, eyes on the road, his jaw tense. Anna sat quietly, glancing out the window as the city gave way to quieter streets lined with trees. Her fingers traced the strap of her bag, mind racing with questions she didn't dare ask. Was he angry? Was he ashamed? Or was he only doing this because he felt he had no choice? After nearly an hour, the car slowed. They pulled up before tall iron gates covered in vines. Beyond them stood a 2-story house, large but weary, its white paint chipped, its windows shuttered. The garden was wild, grass stretching high, roses long forgotten. Anna's eyes widened. She had never lived in anything like this. David stepped out, unlocked the gates with a heavy key, and pushed them open. "It's been empty for years," he said, his tone flat but tinged with something softer. "I bought it once, thought I might use it, but I never did. It's yours now. For you. And the baby." Anna followed him up the creaking steps, her shoes crunching on the leaves scattered across the porch. When he opened the door, a wave of stale air and dust greeted them. The house smelled of time itself, abandoned, untouched. Inside, sheets covered the furniture, cobwebs clung to the corners, and dust motes floated through the shafts of sunlight breaking past the blinds. Still, Anna felt her chest swell. This was not the tiny room in her aunt's house, nor the cramped staff quarters of the resort. This was space, possibility, a home. Her voice trembled as she asked, "You're giving this to me?" David shifted uncomfortably, his hands in his pockets. "Think of it as security, a place where you won't have to worry." Anna blinked back sudden tears. She wanted to believe this was more than obligation, more than guilt. But his eyes slid away, careful, guarded. She whispered, "Thank you." Over the next weeks, Anna set herself to work. She opened every window, letting fresh air cleanse the rooms. She scrubbed the floors until her knees ached, washed curtains stiff with age, dusted shelves that hadn't seen light in years. Slowly, the house began to breathe again. Flowers appeared in vases. Fresh sheets replaced the dusty ones. She even planted small pots of herbs by the kitchen window, watching with satisfaction as green shoots broke through the soil. When she stood in the middle of the nursery, painting the walls a pale cream with her own hands, she felt a flicker of pride. For the first time in years, she wasn't just surviving, she was preparing. David visited often. He brought groceries, vitamins, baby clothes folded neatly in shopping bags. Sometimes he even fixed things: the leaking faucet in the kitchen, the broken hinge on the bedroom door. He always asked if she had enough money, always left cash in an envelope on the table. But he never stayed long, and though he spoke with kindness, there was always a distance. A wall she couldn't break. One evening, after he had left, Anna gathered his shirt from the chair where he had draped it. She was about to fold it when she noticed it, a faint lipstick stain on the collar. The scent of unfamiliar perfume lingered. In the fabric, her hands froze. Her heart ached, even though she knew she had no right to feel this way. David had never promised love. He had promised support, and he was keeping that promise. But still, the thought of him in the arms of another woman while she carried his child sliced her open. She pressed the shirt to her chest, tears burning her eyes. "It's not about me," she whispered to the quiet house. "It's about the baby. I have to be strong." And so, Anna stayed. She cleaned, she prepared, she built her small world inside the once empty house. She pressed her hand to her growing belly and dreamed of a life where her child would never know the hunger, scolding, the shame she had endured. But beneath her strength was a quiet truth she couldn't silence. She was falling deeper into something fragile, something dangerous. She was falling for a man who didn't belong to her, and soon her love and her pain would collide in ways neither of them could escape. The months slipped by in a haze of preparation and quiet determination. Anna's belly grew rounder, her movements slower, her breaths shorter, but her resolve never wavered. She poured herself into becoming the mother she had once longed for. As a child, she stopped eating the cheap canned food she used to survive on. Instead, she spent David's money carefully, buying fresh fruits, vegetables, milk, and vitamins. Every bite she took, she thought of the baby. Every whisper she spoke was to the little life inside her. "You won't know hunger. You won't feel the emptiness I felt. I promise you that." The nursery transformed under her touch. Cream-colored walls, a small crib polished to a shine, a rocking chair by the window where she often sat at night, hand on her stomach, humming softly. The once dusty house began to look like a home, alive with hope. David visited regularly, his arms full of shopping bags, bottles, blankets. He always asked if she needed anything else. I always left cash in an envelope on the table. He even smiled sometimes when he saw her working in the nursery. But his visits were brief, his phone always buzzing, his mind always elsewhere. Anna noticed, but said nothing. She told herself this wasn't about them. It was about the child. And if David wanted to keep his heart locked away, so be it. The day of labor came suddenly. It was early morning when the first sharp pain cut through her abdomen, stealing her breath. She doubled over, clutching the kitchen counter, her knees trembling. Sweat broke across her forehead. Another wave hit, harder, forcing her to cry out. Panic surged. She grabbed her phone and dialed Mary, the kind supervisor from the resort who had become her quiet friend. Within minutes, Mary arrived, bundled her into a car, and rushed her to the hospital. Hours blurred into screams, tears, and pain so fierce Anna thought she might not survive it. The doctors urged her to push, their voices urgent, but her strength was fading fast. Her world narrowed to flashes of white light and the pounding of her own heart. For one terrifying moment, the room spun into black. She heard someone shout her name, felt cold hands on her arms, and thought, "This is it. I won't make it." Then, piercing through the haze, came a cry, high-pitched, fragile, beautiful. Anna forced her eyes open. A nurse leaned over her, placing a tiny bundle on her chest. She looked down, and for the first time saw the small, wriggling face of her child. Tears poured down her cheeks as she whispered, "My baby, my sweet baby." The world could have ended right there, and it wouldn't have mattered, hours later. The door burst open. David entered, his tie loose, his hair disheveled, his face pale with worry. He looked nothing like the polished man she had first met at the resort, when his eyes fell on her. Pale and exhausted, holding the baby close, his steps faltered. Slowly he approached, his voice breaking. Is he ours?" Anna managed a tired smile. "Ours." David stared at the infant, his expression unreadable. Then, almost awkwardly, he reached out. His large hand, always steady in the boardroom, trembled as he touched the baby's tiny fingers. When the child curled them around his, David let out a sound, half laugh, half sob. "God," he whispered. "He's perfect." For the first time, Anna saw something genuine in him. Not duty, not guilt, but joy. She leaned back against the pillows, her body weak, but her heart full. She had nearly died bringing this child into the world. But seeing David's guarded heart crack open, even just a little, made her believe it had all been worth it. The next few days were a blur of sleepless nights and endless feedings. Anna clung to her child, never letting him out of her sight. David visited often, sometimes staying hours, watching quietly as Anna rocked the baby. He was awkward, unsure, but every time he held the infant, his shoulders softened, his eyes lit, in ways Anna had never seen. For the first time, the three of them were together, messy, fragile, uncertain, but a family nonetheless. Anna allowed herself to dream just a little, that maybe this was the start of something real. But deep down, she knew dreams could be fragile things, and her story with David was only beginning. Life after the baby's arrival was nothing like Anna had imagined. Her days blurred into sleepless nights, quiet lullabies, and endless diaper changes. She barely had time to eat, to rest, to breathe, but she didn't complain. Every cry, every yawn, every tiny heartbeat against her chest reminded her that she was no longer living for herself. She was living for her child. David tried at first. He brought toys and baby clothes, sometimes even held the baby with cautious, trembling hands. He smiled awkwardly when the infant wrapped a fist around his finger, and Anna caught glimpses of something softer in him. For a while, she dared to hope that perhaps they could become a family. But slowly, the cracks began to show. David returned to his old rhythms late nights. Phone calls he stepped outside to take. Long hours where his presence was felt more in the scent of his cologne lingering in the hall than in his actual company. He grew distant, distracted, and when he was home, his eyes often wandered to his phone instead of the child in front of him. Anna tried to be patient, reminded herself that he had never promised love, only support. But it hurt more than she expected, especially on nights when she sat alone, rocking the baby while David slept soundly in another room. Worse, didn't come home at all. One evening, after a particularly long day, Anna was rocking the baby in the nursery when she heard David's voice from the living room. His tone was low, tired, but the words cut through the thin walls like a knife. She's just a janitor who got lucky. Anna froze. Her arms tightened around the baby as the words echoed in her mind. Just a janitor. Just someone who stumbled into his life by accident. Her throat burned, her vision blurred with tears. She had given him everything, her body, her trust. Nearly her life bringing this child into the world, and still to him she was nothing more than a burden he tolerated out of obligation. She pressed her lips to her baby's forehead, whispering, through her tears, "You're worth more than this. And so am I." In that moment, she made her decision. The next morning, before dawn, Anna packed what little she owned. A few changes of clothes, the baby's essentials, her worn envelope of documents. She wrapped her child in a warm blanket, cradling him close. She paused at the nursery door, her heart aching as she looked at the room she had poured her hope into. The crib, the cream-painted walls, the rocking chair by the window. For a moment she almost turned back, but then she remembered his words, sharp and merciless. Just a janitor. Her jaw tightened. She slipped quietly through the house, her footsteps soft on the floorboards, and stepped into the cold morning air. By the time the sun rose, Anna was gone. When David returned that night, the house felt wrong. It's quiet. 'Tis still. He called her name as he walked through the halls, but no answer came. The crib was empty, the drawers half open, the baby clothes gone. Panic surged through him as he tore through each room, shouting until his voice cracked. His heart pounded in his chest, his mind racing. He searched the streets, called everyone he knew, but it was useless. Anna had left. And for the first time in years, David felt true fear, not the fear of losing money or power, but the fear of losing the only two people who had ever truly mattered. That night, alone in the empty house, he sat on the nursery floor, his head in his hands. For so long, he had believed he was untouchable, that people came and went in his life without leaving a mark. But Anna had left a mark deeper than he could have imagined, and now she was gone. David didn't sleep the night Anna left. He couldn't. He sat in the empty nursery, staring at the crib that now seemed like a coffin for everything he had lost. The house, once alive with the sound of a baby's cries and Anna's soft humming, had fallen into a silence that suffocated him. By morning, panic drove him into motion. He called the resort, demanding to know if Anna had returned there. The staff exchanged nervous glances over the phone, but no one had seen her. He hired private investigators, offering them more money than they had ever made before, sending them into every corner of the city. For days, he drove aimlessly, checking bus stations, cheap motels, even hospitals. Every time he saw a young mother with a child, his heart leapt only to crash when it wasn't her, the once confident CEO. The man who commanded boardrooms and bent markets to his will now wandered the streets like a beggar searching for scraps of hope. It was Jack who finally found him. David was slumped in his office chair, his tie undone, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. Empty coffee cups littered the desk. Jack closed the door behind him and studied his old friend quietly before speaking. "You look like hell," Jack said. David's laugh was bitter, humorless. "She's gone, Jack. She took the baby and left, and I can't find her. I don't know what to do." Jack sat across from him, leaning forward. "Maybe you should start by admitting why it hurts so much." David's jaw tightened. Because I care." "No," Jack said firmly, "because you love her. And you're too damn stubborn to say it." David looked away, his throat burning. Love was a word he had avoided all his life. Felt dangerous, like a weakness. But now, stripped bare, he couldn't deny it. Jack sighed, then hesitated, as if weighing whether to speak. Finally, he said, "Do you remember what the doctors told you years ago? Back in college?" David frowned. "About what?" "About your condition." Jack's eyes were steady. "Can't have children, David. You're infertile." You've known this." The words hit like a blow. David froze, his mind racing back to that sterile doctor's office, and the cold words he had buried deep inside. "You won't be able to father children naturally." He had locked that truth away, buried it under work and women and distractions. But now it came crashing back. That baby, David whispered, his voice cracking. He's mine. Jack shook his head. Not by blood. But that doesn't matter. He's yours in every way that counts. And it gave you something no one else ever could. Family. A chance to be more than the man you've been. David's chest tightened, guilt flooding his veins. He thought of Anna, rocking their child in the dead of night, her eyes filled with exhaustion and love. He thought of the way he had dismissed her, reduced her to a labeled just a janitor. Tears burned his eyes, hot and unrelenting. For years he had prided himself on never crying, never breaking. But now the dam gave way. She was never just a janitor, he whispered, his voice shaking. She's everything. And I pushed her away. Jack placed a hand on his shoulder. And don't waste another second. Find her. Fight for her. Not with money, not with promises. With yourself. The man she and that baby deserve. David nodded slowly, determination sparking where despair had been. For the first time in his life, he understood what truly mattered. That night, alone in the quiet house, David walked into the nursery. He sat beside the empty crib, running his fingers over the smooth wooden rail. I was a fool, he whispered. Into the silence. But I'll find you, Anna. I'll find you, and I'll never let you feel alone again. And in that vow, his transformation began. Days turned into weeks, and every one of them stretched like an eternity for David. His investigators traced leads across the city. But Anna seemed to vanish into thin air. Each time a tip came in, he drove there himself, heart pounding, only to find the trail gone cold. He barely ate. He barely slept. His empire, the company he had once worshipped, began to crumble in his absence. Board members whispered about his instability. Partners threatened to pull out of deals, but none of it mattered. What was the point of wealth, of power, of influence, if the woman he loved and the child he had begun to see as his own were gone? Then, one morning, an investigator burst into his office, breathless. We found her. She's living in a small town an hour from here, above a bakery, always with the baby. David didn't wait. He grabbed his keys, ignoring the pile of contracts on his desk, and left without a word. The town was quiet, the kind of place where everyone knew each other. Narrow streets lined with small shops, the smell of fresh bread and roasted coffee drifting through the air. David parked his sleek black car at the curb, feeling out of place among the modest buildings and bicycles, its chain defenses. He found the bakery Isoliette was the only one on the street. He stood on the sidewalk for a moment, staring up at the small window above. Curtain fluttered, and for a split second, he thought he saw movement. His chest tightened. Climbing the narrow stairs, his heart thundered in his ears. When he reached the door, he froze. His hand hovered over the wood, his breath shallow. What if she refused to see him? What if she slammed the door in his face? He knocked anyway. The door creaked open, and there she was. Anna, her hair was pulled back loosely, strands falling around her tired face. She wore a simple dress, faded at the seams, but she had never looked more beautiful to him. In her arms, the baby squirmed, letting out a soft laugh that made David's knees weak. Her eyes widened in shock, then hardened. What are you doing? Here, she asked flatly. David swallowed, his voice trembling for the first time in years. I came for you, for both of you. She tightened her hold on the baby, her shoulders stiff. You don't belong here. Go back to your world, David. We'll be fine on our own. Her words cut him, but he didn't move. I know I don't deserve another chance. I know I hurt you. But please, just listen. Anna's laugh was bitter. Listen. To what? More excuses? More lies? I nearly died bringing your child into this world, and you called me a janitor who got lucky. Do you think I can forget that? David's chest ached. No, you shouldn't forget it. I was cruel, blind and arrogant. But I've changed. Losing you showed me what I really am. Without you, nothing. She shook her head, her eyes glistening. Words don't mean anything, David. Not anymore. He stepped closer, desperation raw in his voice. Then hear the truth. Jack reminded me of something I'd buried. The doctors told me years ago, can't have children, I'm infertile, baby. His voice broke. He's not my blood, but he's my son. It's the miracle I never thought I'd have. And you, Anna, you gave me that miracle. Anna froze, her breath catching. David's eyes filled with tears, his voice cracking. You are not just a janitor. You are the strongest, bravest woman I've ever known. You're everything I never knew I needed. I love you, Anna. I love both of you. Please, let me make it right. For a long moment, silence hung between them. The baby reached out a tiny hand toward David, cooing softly. Anna's eyes filled with tears, but her face remained guarded. Love isn't enough, David. You can't erase the past with speeches. You hurt me. You made me believe I was nothing. Do you know how hard it is to trust you again? David's shoulders shook. He had faced ruthless businessmen, political sharks, and the cold cruelty of the world without flinching. But standing before Anna, he felt stripped bare. I'll spend the rest of my life proving I've changed, he whispered. Not with money, not with gifts, but with me. Every day, every moment. I'll be the man you and our son deserve. Tears spilled down Anna's cheeks. She looked at her baby, then back at David. The child giggled again, reaching out, as if urging her to listen. Finally, she spoke, her voice trembling. If I let you back in, David, it's not about me anymore. It's about him. His heart, I swear I'll never forgive you. David stepped forward, placing a trembling hand on the baby's back. He met Anna's gaze with raw sincerity. I won't. Not this time. I promise. And there, in that small apartment above a bakery, surrounded by the scent of bread and the weight of the past, the fragile threads of healing began to weave between them. For David, it wasn't the end of his empire that terrified him anymore. It was the thought of losing the only empire that truly mattered, Anna, and the child who had made him believe in miracles again. The days that followed were unlike any David had ever known. For years, his life had been a blur of flashing lights, boardroom battles, expensive dinners, and people who wanted something from him. But now, his mornings began not with ringing phones or the sound of a car engine, but with the soft cry of a baby in a small apartment above a bakery. And strangely, it was harder and more rewarding than anything he had done before. At first, Anna kept her distance. She allowed him to visit, to hold the baby, to bring groceries. But her eyes remained wary, a shield between them. Trust wasn't something that could be bought or begged for. It had to be earned, slowly, painfully. So David started small. He showed up every morning, sometimes before Anna even woke, bringing fresh bread from the bakery downstairs or fruit from the market. He fumbled with diapers, his hands clumsy and too large for the tiny snaps on the baby's onesies. More than once, Anna had to stifle her laughter at the sight of him struggling, muttering curses under his breath. But David didn't quit. He learned. He carried baskets at the market, asked strangers which baby formula was best, and stayed up, late reading guides on how to care for infants. When Anna cooked, he washed the dishes. When the sink leaked, he fixed it. When Anna looked too tired to move, he took the baby for a walk through the quiet streets so she could rest. Each small act chipped away at the wall between them. One night, after hours of rocking the baby who refused to sleep, David collapsed. Into the chair beside Anna, he rubbed his face and let out a groan. I've negotiated with some of the most ruthless men alive, closed deals worth millions. But nothing's harder than getting this little guy to close his eyes. Anna chuckled, shaking her head. Welcome to real life, David. He looked at her, surprised by the softness in her voice. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't looking at him with suspicion. She was smiling, and for David, that was worth more than any fortune. But the old world still called to him. His phone buzzed constantly with messages from investors, old acquaintances, women who wondered where he had disappeared to. There were moments when his hand twitched, wanting to answer, to slip back into the life he had once known. But then he'd look at Anna, her hair loose, her eyes heavy with exhaustion, yet still rocking their child with endless patience, and he'd silence the phone. One evening his father called, his voice booming through the line. "What are you doing, David? Living in some rundown apartment with a woman who was supposed to clean your floors. You're embarrassing this family. You have responsibilities, a legacy to protect." David glanced toward Anna, who was spoon-feeding the baby with quiet concentration. His chest tightened, and for once he didn't hesitate. "My legacy is here, Dad," he said firmly. "With them. Not the company, not the money. Them." His father sputtered with rage, but David ended the call. When he looked back, Anna was staring at him, eyes wide, lips parted. She had heard every word. She didn't say anything, but for the first time her gaze softened with something close to belief. Weeks turned into months. David changed more than he thought possible. He no longer showed up with expensive gifts, trying to buy forgiveness. Instead, he gave his time, his energy, his presence. He learned how to cradle the baby against his chest so the child slept peacefully. He memorized the soft songs Anna sang at night and sometimes hummed them himself, off-key but earnest. He cooked simple meals, burning more than a few. But Anna laughed and ate them anyway. One rainy afternoon, the three of them sat by the window. Anna held the baby in her arms, rocking gently, while David strummed an old guitar he had found tucked. In a corner, his voice was rough, uncertain, but filled with warmth. Anna listened, her heart aching. She had tried to guard herself to keep her walls high. But this man who had once been cold and cruel, was now sitting barefoot on the floor, singing lullabies in the glow of lamplight. She turned to him, her voice quiet. "Why now, David? Why are you trying so hard?" He set the guitar aside and met her gaze. "Because I almost lost you. And I realized that if I did, none of the money, none of the success would mean anything. That matter. I don't want to be the man I was. I want to be the man you both deserve." Anna's eyes filled with tears. She wanted to believe him, but belief took time. Still, she felt something shift inside her, something warm, something hopeful. For the first time, she allowed herself to think. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't only about survival anymore. Maybe it was about love. When David told Anna about the family dinner, her first instinct was to refuse. "Your family?" she asked, holding the baby against her shoulder.
Oh.
"The same people who think I don't belong in your world?" David nodded, his expression serious. "Yes, but I don't care what they think anymore. You and our son are part of my life now. They can't accept that, then that's their problem. But I want them to meet you, I want them to see the truth." Anna hesitated. The thought of walking into a room full of polished, wealthy people who looked at her as nothing more than the maid filled her with dread. Yet the determination in David's eyes, the way he stood firm, made her reconsider. Finally, she sighed. "All right. But don't expect me to play dress-up. I'll go as myself." David's lips curved into a smile. "That's all I want." Night of the dinner, the city glittered with lights as they drove toward the Folker estate. The mansion loomed like a palace, its stone walls glowing under golden lamps, gardens sprawling in every direction. Anna had never seen anything like it. Her stomach twisted as David parked the car. She glanced down at her simple dress clean but plain and her worn shoes. Beside her, David looked like a man born for this place. Sharp suit, polished shoes, confidence radiating from every line of his body. She whispered, "I don't belong here." David reached for her hand, squeezing it firmly. "You belong with me. That's all that matters." Inside, the dining hall buzzed with chatter. Crystal, chandeliers spilled light across long tables draped in linen, silverware gleaming. Guests in gowns and tuxedos turned as David entered, their conversations faltering when they saw Anna at his side with the baby in her arms. Whispers rippled through the room. "Is that her? She looks so ordinary." David must have lost his mind. Anna's cheeks burned, but she lifted her chin, holding her son closer. David ignored them all, guiding her toward the head of the table where his father sat. The older man, stern and immaculately dressed, narrowed his eyes as he rose. "So this is the woman," he said coldly. "The one who distracted you from your duties?" Anna's stomach dropped. She wanted to sink into the floor. But before She could speak. David stepped forward, his voice sharp. "She's not a distraction. She's the mother of my child, and she's the woman I love." Gasps echoed around the table. His father's jaw tightened. "Love, David, you're humiliating this family. She's beneath you." David's hand clenched, his voice firm. "No one is beneath me. Not her. Not ever. If anything, I don't deserve her." Silence fell on us. Eyes widened. She stared at him, her heart pounding. For the first time, he wasn't hiding, wasn't running. He was standing in front of everyone, his powerful father, his wealthy relatives in, declaring his love for her. The dinner that followed was tense. Some family members avoided Anna, their noses turned up. Others offered polite but distant smiles. But David never left her side. He served her food, poured her water, even bounced the baby on his knee when he grew restless. At one point, Anna leaned close and whispered, "You didn't have to do all that." David looked at her, his expression soft but unwavering. "Yes, I did. I needed them to see that you're not just part of my life. You are my life." Her throat tightened, her eyes stinging with tears. By the end of the night, whispers still lingered, but something had changed. The cold stares had softened, even if only slightly. And as they left the mansion, Anna realized she wasn't trembling anymore. In the car, she turned to David. "You really meant what you said back there?" He glanced at her, his hand finding hers. "Every word. I'll never let anyone make." "You feel small again." For the first time, Anna believed him, and in that belief, something inside her walls began to crumble. For a while, life began to feel almost normal. Anna started to see the softer side of David more often. He woke early to make breakfast, though his scrambled eggs were nearly inedible. He carried the baby on his chest during walks, humming awkward lullabies that made strangers smile. He even canceled meetings to spend evenings at home, something the old David would have never dreamed of. For Anna, each small gesture chipped away at the walls she had built. She still carried scars from his past words. But every day he gave her reasons to believe he had truly changed. Then the past came knocking. It was a Sunday afternoon. Anna was folding laundry in the living room while David played with the baby. On the floor, the sound of laughter filled the house, bright and innocent. But when the doorbell rang, everything shifted. David opened the door and froze. Standing there was a woman in her early 30s, tall, elegant, dressed in a sleek red dress that clung to her figure. Her dark hair spilled over her shoulders, her lips painted a striking shade of crimson. She looked like she belonged on a magazine cover, not on David's doorstep. "Hello, David," she purred. Her smile both familiar and sharp. Anna's hands stilled on the baby blanket in her lap. She rose slowly, unease prickling down her spine. David's voice was tight. "Clara, what are you doing here?" Clara stepped inside as if she owned the place, her heels clicking against the floor. Her gaze swept over the living room, then landed on Anna. "And who's this?" she asked sweetly, though the edge in her tone was unmistakable. David's jaw tightened. "This is Anna, my partner." Claire's brows shot up. She looked Anna up and down, her eyes glinting with amusement. "Your partner? How things have changed? Last I checked, you weren't the type to settle." The air in the room grew heavy. Anna's stomach twisted, but she forced herself to stand tall, holding the baby closer. Later, when Clara finally left, Anna turned to David, her voice low. "Who is she?" David sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Someone from my past. We were involved. But it meant nothing, Anna. It was before you." Anna's chest tightened. She didn't look like it meant nothing to her. David stepped closer, his eyes pleading. "It's over. She has no place in my life now. You and our son, that's all that matters." But Anna's doubts lingered. She had fought so hard to trust him again, to believe his promises. And now, confronted with living proof of the man he used to be, the old fears returned. Was he truly different? Or was she just another chapter in his long list of temporary women? That night, as David slept with the baby in his arms, Anna lay awake staring at the ceiling. Her heart ached with conflict. She wanted to believe in him. She wanted to believe in the man who had stood up for her in front of his family, who had changed diapers and learned lullabies and whispered vows of love. But she also remembered the man who had once called her just a janitor. Which man was real? Anna closed her eyes, clutching the blanket tighter. She knew the next days would test them both more than ever before, because shadows of the past had a way of creeping back, and love was not yet strong enough to chase them away completely. Clara didn't disappear after that first visit. Over the next week, her presence lingered like a shadow. She sent messages to David's phone at odd hours, sometimes casual, sometimes suggestive. She bumped into him outside his office, arriving in sharp heels and leaving a trail of expensive perfume behind her. Once, she even appeared at the cafe where Anna liked to sit with the baby. Offering a smile that felt more like a smirk, Anna noticed everything. She stayed quiet at first, telling herself not to overreact. But each time she saw Clara's name flash on David's phone, doubt gnawed at her. She had trusted him once and nearly lost everything. Could she risk trusting him again? One evening, the tension finally broke. Anna was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of soup, when David walked in. His phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced down, instinctively, and froze. It was Clara. The message read, "Miss you. Is dinner tomorrow?" Same place as before. Anna's hand trembled on the spoon. She looked up at David, her eyes burning. "She's still in your life, isn't she?" David's gaze dropped to the phone. For a moment, guilt flickered across his face. Then he stepped forward quickly, grabbing the device and silencing it. "No," he said firmly. "She isn't. She's trying to be, but I won't let her." Anna's voice cracked. "Then why is she still calling? Why does she think she has a chance?" David exhaled sharply, then did something she didn't expect. He picked up the phone, dialed Clara's number, pressed speaker. The line clicked, and Clara's silky voice filled the room. "David, I knew you'd call back. I was just thinking." "Stop." David cut her off, his tone cold. "This ends now. Whatever we had before is over. Don't want you in my life, Clara. Not as a friend, not as anything. Don't call me again." There was silence on the line, followed by a bitter laugh. "You're serious, all this? For her?" David's eyes flicked to Anna, then to the baby sleeping in the next room. His voice was steady. "For her. For my family. If you can't respect that, then don't bother showing up again." He ended the call, the sound final and sharp in the quiet kitchen. Anna stood frozen, her heart pounding. She had expected excuses, maybe half promises. She had not expected this David drawing a line so clear, so absolute. He turned to her, his expression raw. "I should have done that the first time she showed up. I was a coward. I thought ignoring her would make her go away. But I see now that it only made you doubt me. And you were right too." Her lips parted, but no words came. David stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Anna, I don't care about Clara or anyone else from my past. I care about you. One who changed me. You're the one I love. And I'll prove it every day for the rest of my life if you let me." Anna's chest ached, her defenses crumbling under the weight of his sincerity. For so long she had lived with the fear of being second choice, of being temporary, but standing there, watching him cut ties with the past in front of her. She began to believe. Later that night, after the baby was asleep, Anna sat beside David on the couch. The room was quiet, except for the soft hum of the refrigerator. She leaned her head against his shoulder, something she hadn't done in months. David froze for a second, then wrapped an arm around her. She whispered, almost too softly to hear, "I want to trust you. I really do." He pressed his lips to the top of her head. "And trust me, I won't let you down again." For the first time in a long time, Anna allowed herself to exhale the fear she had been holding on to. And in that small, fragile moment, a new beginning took root. For a few blessed months, life settled into a rhythm. Mornings began with sunlight spilling into the small apartment, the smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen, and the sound of David making exaggerated faces to coax giggles out of the baby. Anna would watch them, her heart swelling with a fragile kind of peace. At night, they'd share quiet dinners, take turns rocking their son to sleep, and sometimes fall asleep themselves, side by side on the couch, exhausted, but content. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. For Anna, it was more than she had ever dared to hope for. Then one night, everything changed. It began with a cough. Just a small one, the kind every child gets. Anna thought little of it at first, wrapping the baby in a blanket and humming softly. But the cough grew harsher, deeper, until his tiny chest heaved with each breath. By midnight, panic had set in. The baby burned with fever, his face flushed, his cries weak and ragged. Anna's heart raced as she held him close, whispering prayers. Through tears, David rushed to her side, his calm day cracking as he touched the child's forehead. "He's burning up. We need to go now." They sped through the dark streets, headlights cutting through the night. Anna sat in the back seat, cradling their son, her tears soaking his blanket. David gripped the wheels so tightly his knuckles whitened, his jaw set with a fear he couldn't hide. At the hospital, doctors and nurses swarmed. Anna stood frozen as they whisked the baby from her arms, her cries echoing down the sterile halls. David wrapped an arm around her shoulders, but his own eyes glistened with unshed tears. Minutes stretched into hours. Each tick of the clock was torture. Anna prayed silently, promising anything: her health, her happiness, her very life. Only her child would be spared. Finally, a doctor emerged, exhaustion etched on his face. "He's stable for now. We'll need to keep him here for observation. He was severely dehydrated, and the infection hit fast, but you brought him in just in time." Anna collapsed into a chair, sobbing with relief. David stood beside her, his hand trembling as it rested on her back. The days that followed were some of the hardest of their lives. They slept on stiff hospital chairs, ate stale sandwiches from vending machines, and hovered over the crib where their son lay hooked up. 2 tubes and monitors. Anna never left his side, brushing his hair back, singing softly even when her voice cracked from exhaustion. David, who'd once thought himself too powerful to ever feel helpless, now spent every moment humbled. He held his son's tiny hand, whispering promises through clenched teeth. "You're strong, little man. Stronger than me. Just hold on." At night, when Anna finally dozed off, David sat alone in the dim hospital light, his head in his hands. For the first time, he prayed, not for wealth, not for success, but for the chance to see his son grow up, to see Anna smile again. On the 3rd day, the fever broke. The doctor smiled as he delivered the news. "He's responding well. With rest, he'll make a full recovery." Anna burst into tears, clutching David's hand. David himself nearly crumpled with relief, his heart pounding as if he had been holding his breath for days. He leaned over the crib, pressing a trembling kiss to his son's forehead. "We almost lost him," Anna whispered later, her voice raw. David pulled her into his arms, his own voice breaking. "Never again. I swear to you, Anna, I'll never take a single day for granted. Not with him, not with you." And in that crucible of fear, something unshakable was forged. When they finally returned home, the air felt different. The walls of the apartment seemed warmer, the laughter of their child brighter. Every smile, every giggle, every ordinary moment was suddenly extraordinary. Anna looked at David one evening as he lay on the floor, letting their son crawl clumsily across his chest. She saw not the cold CEO she had once known, but a man transformed, broken, rebuilt, and made stronger by love. And for the first time, she allowed herself to believe without hesitation. He wasn't going to leave. He wasn't going to falter. They had survived the fire together, and now they were truly a family. The year turned quickly after the long nights in the hospital. Summer faded into autumn, and autumn gave way to the chill of winter. For Anna, each passing day was a gift. Every laugh from her son, every sunrise she shared with David felt like proof that they had been given a second chance at life. By December, the city was alive with lights. Trees twinkled in windows, carols floated through the air, and snow dusted the streets in soft white. For the first time since she was a child, Anna felt the stirrings of holiday magic. But this year, it wasn't just the season that filled her with warmth, it was the family she had built out of broken pieces. David, too, was different. The man who once measured his worth in profits and power now measured it in giggles, hugs, and quiet dinners at home. He had changed, not with words, but with actions. And as Christmas approached, he wanted to do something more. One cold December morning, David came into the kitchen with a sparkle in his eye. "Put on something warm," he told Anna. "We're going out." Anna raised a brow, balancing their son on her hip. "Out where?" David only smiled. "You'll see." They bundled up in coats and scarves, their little boy wrapped snug in a red blanket. David drove them into the heart of the city, where holiday lights sparkled like stars against the dark sky. He parked near a church, and as they stepped out, Anna realized what was happening. Lines of families stretched around the block, mothers, fathers, children, all waiting for food and warm clothing. Volunteers bustled around tables stacked with boxes of gifts, coats, and meals. Anna turned to David, stunned. "What is this?" David's smile softened. "This year, instead of hosting another lavish party for people who already have too much, I thought we could give to those who don't have enough. I wanted our son's first Christmas to mean something real." Anna's throat tightened. She watched as David opened the trunk of the car, revealing boxes of toys, clothes, and food he had bought himself. He carried them to the tables, setting them down with quiet determination. For hours they worked side by side. Anna handed out warm meals, smiling at the shy children who whispered thank yous. David knelt to give toys to little ones, his sharp suit replaced by a thick sweater, his hands gentle as he tied scarves around their necks. Their baby giggled in Anna's arms as if sensing the joy all around them. The air was filled with laughter, gratitude, and the jingling of bells. And for Anna, it was the most beautiful Christmas she had ever known at one point. She caught David standing still, watching a little girl hug the doll he had just given her. His eyes glistened, his jaw trembling. He turned to Anna, his voice breaking. "Do you see it? This is what I was missing all those years. It's not the money, it's not the power. This love. Giving family, you gave me this, Anna." Anna stepped closer, placing a hand on his cheek. "No, David, you chose this. You chose us." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as the snow began to fall around them. That night, back in their apartment, they sat together by the small Christmas tree Anna had decorated with paper ornaments and twinkling lights. Their son slept soundly in his crib, the soft glow of the tree reflecting off his cherubic face. Anna leaned against David, her heart full. "They don't have much, but it feels like everything." David kissed the top of her head. "Because it is everything, I promise you, and no matter what happens, I'll never forget what really matters." She smiled, closing her eyes. For the first time in a long time, there was no fear, no doubt, no shadow of the past. There was only love, warm and unshakable, and as the snow fell gently outside their window, Anna realized their story had finally found its true ending, not one of wealth or power, but of love, sacrifice, and the joy of giving. A Christmas miracle.